Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude Mystic, and welcome to this evening's deep woo-woo episode of the Wacky Woo. With me tonight, as a special guest, of course, is Penny Kelly. You can find her at pennykelly.com. Penny, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Bix. Hi, JC. Hi, everybody out there. It is really good to be here.
Excited to have you on. Penny, thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with us this
Yeah.
evening. And folks, please join me in welcoming also the one and only Mr. Bix Weir. You can find him at roadtoruda.com. Bix, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing good. I haven't been on with Penny in such a long time. It's very invigorating to have her young presence here.
Oh.
Well, speaking of her young presence, yes, we're getting a lot of comments in the live chat that she looks absolutely ripped. And I think Clif was suggesting that maybe she was a little bit hard to handle here. So, yes, I apologize for being late, guys. Tonight, we are still having some weird issues with our microphones. Hopefully, you guys can hear us okay. Somebody's asking where Joe is. Joe let me know earlier today that he couldn't make it to the show tonight. Something happened on his schedule. So I asked Bix if he can take his place here tonight. And Bix was kind enough to say yes here at the last minute. So hopefully Joe will be back starting next Sunday for the next episode of the Wacky Woo Show. So guys, let us know if the sound is okay. Again, we've been having quite a few issues here just before going live. And again, just when we went live, it kind of crapped on us and it looks like we're going okay. So anyways, we're going to start the show, guys. There's a lot to go through this evening on the slide deck. I'm going to leave some room also perhaps for some questions and some out-of-the-box thinking maybe and some conversation here between my guests so that we can kind of better navigate what the hell is going on in our crazy, crazy world of ours here. First, Penny, if you want to give us a quick introduction as to where you're situated right now, where you're at, looking at everything that's just happened. It appears that every day, every hour, things are getting crazier and crazier, but at the same time, it seems like there's a silver lining and things are, if you look very carefully, it looks like there's some positivity there and some cause for maybe cautious optimism. What do you say? What do you think is happening right now, Penny?
I'll just share that I had just a flash. This was yesterday. I was busy recording all day yesterday, but the flash was that the election had happened, that Trump had won, and that everybody, I mean, it was rough for a few months. If Trump wins, people are going to relax a little bit. And that just shocked me. When I saw that, it was like, oh my God, I'm expecting the worst, hoping for the best, planning, to handle either one. But it looked like there were a lot of legal issues over the next year, maybe the next 5 years. Big changes in the financial world. And one of the things that I had seen, I was going to say this in the look-see again. I think I said it in September, but I was going to repeat it in October, and I didn't. It was getting too long. But it was that the crypto thing, the whole crypto thing, had been a plan originally, or had been a deep state kind of plan, and they lost control of it. They don't have control of it anymore. And so there's this whole issue of central bank digital currencies. And then there's the whole crypto thing, other crypto besides CBDCs. And it looks like the crypto thing is the survivor, if I can say it that way. And maybe we'll even have gold back, and some silver. Some I don't understand finance. That's not my forte. But in looking at that, it looked like both gold and silver and maybe some other things were being used to back certain cryptos. So that was a shock for me, and a sort of a like, okay, relief that I'm going to say that the deep state put something out there and then lost control of it. And the last thing was that they, because of the alternative media and the attempt to be constantly getting ahead of, they might do this, be watching for that, be ready for this. They don't know what to do anymore. They're, as a group, they're starting to argue badly between and among themselves as to what they think will work, and they can't agree. And that is going to get maybe worse. That infighting going to get worse. And I don't know if they're going to be able to pull off much of anything. Now, if they hear this, they might say, "Oh, we're going to make a fool out of her, and we're going to do this, and and we're going to start some kind of crap." But it wouldn't be anything that we aren't ready for. And if you just hear something one time, that it takes the psychological punch out of the picture. There might be some, oh, damn, there they go, putting that stupid stuff out again. But it loses a huge amount of its power. And so those are some of the things I've been looking at going, wow. And they are changing daily. So it might be different tomorrow, but that's, as of yesterday,
that's where we're at.
Seeing all that.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that intro, and congratulations, Penny. You're getting a lot of chat here in the live chat about your amazing looks, your youngness, and your vigor, and yeah, I got lots of great comments. So I got to ask you, what are you doing? Everybody's saying you're aging backwards like Benjamin Button. What's going on, Penny?
I don't know. I don't know what to say. I do exercise. I get on the treadmill every day. I don't like it, so I watch people like you and Cliffy and other stuff, news, for maybe only 1.5 miles to 2 miles. And then I do exercise in the morning. I have my secret exercises that are very powerful for keeping you young. And then I do the Fountain of Youth exercises, and I lift a few weights. But it's not a lot for somebody my age. You only have to do like eight curls of each thing. Yeah. That's enough to keep you going, to keep your arms and your upper body strength in good shape. So until I saw that picture, it was like, oh man, that is not like, okay, well, JC wants a picture in a shirt with tough look. And we were having such fun taking the picture. I could barely get the tough look up.
Well, you look amazing, and thank you for being on. And yeah, a lot of great comments here tonight. And somebody says, "Hey, JC and Bixie, you guys look great too." Okay, so we got Bixie and I got a little bit of love there too.
We're getting grayer by the day.
Yeah, it's starting to show here. Bix, let me ask you the same question here before we go too far into the slide deck for tonight. Do you feel that there's a shift in the winds, maybe a little bit of different energy this week? And if so, like, where do you think all of this is going? What's your overall radar right now, speaking to the audience?
Well, I'd say last 6 months have been hell. It's kind of like interpersonal stuff and out in the markets and everywhere. It's just everybody I talk to's got they're on the edge of their seats, not knowing what this feeling is. And they're not grounding themselves at all. And that's what you really need to do. Find your core and just hunker down and understand what you know, and then learn a lot. Yeah, we're at that time of huge change. I think from a financial background, absolutely, 1,000%. We got 2 to 3 quadrillion in derivatives that are about to blow any day. People don't talk about that much anymore, but that is the bank killer. We've had silver breaking out finally. From I don't know if it's out of control, but it is knowing that the good guys have charge of this. If $50 is pierced, I would say the comics shuts down. Because if it doesn't shut down, we'd have too big to fails dropping like flies. But I think that's what the system needs. I think we need a cleanse, and I don't think it can be a controlled cleanse. I know they're trying to control the collapse of a few banks. The FDIC's been talking about it for a while. Personally, I don't think it can be controlled or will be controlled. I don't think the next system we move into is going to be decided by the same people that are out there talking right now. It has to be a system where no deciders are needed. And what is that? Well, we can have cryptos, we can have gold and silver. In America, in the United States, we can go back to gold and silver fairly easily. And when Penny was saying, we'll have some kind of silver gold or crypto with the silver gold backing, I think it's the other way around. I think silver and gold will be used as money, and then adding some kind of crypto to gold and silver will give them the usefulness of being to go down to your local supermarket and buy a loaf of bread with it. So it's the same but different, because I don't think cryptos need anything as backing for people to understand. If you understand cryptos, you understand them. You don't need any backing. Silver and gold, it's a little different. Silver and gold need something to make it more useful, and the blockchain is perfect for that. I don't know if they'll invent a new blockchain, use Bitcoin, use something much faster. I don't know, but it's clear to me that time in history is now, and we'll be living through it over the next few months.
And to your point, also, gold and silver need to be more transparent. We need to have audits. We haven't had any audits here in the United States since perhaps the 70s. So adding crypto to gold and silver makes a lot of sense here, the way you're just saying it there, Biggs. Okay. I think I want to start the show here this evening. Well, first of all, thank you, Biggs, for that. And guys, tomorrow I'm going to have Andy Scheckman on also for a special Black Monday show here, October 28th. We're going to look at some of the echoes in time to the Great Depression, where we're at now. We're going to look into what just happened last week with the BRICS meetings, where that seems to be evolving. We're going to be touching about that tonight a little bit as well. And we're going to be looking at gold and silver, what's happening behind the scenes. Some of the technical analysis work, as well as what appears to be happening on the larger scheme in terms of this silver and gold manipulation coming perhaps to an end. We're seeing now that Russia is proposing to put COMEX and the LME out of the market rigging business, which was just news here last week. So we'll see where that goes. We're going to get into that a little bit tonight, and of course in more details tomorrow with Andy Scheckman. So please don't miss that if you're interested in those topics. Now for this evening, we have to start with this famous Joe Rogan and Donald Trump interview. Of course, this was forecasted for the first time, I believe, in 2009 by Clif High in the WebBot data, and it was reviewed by the remote viewers in 2018 or 19 also. This is a sketch here from Dick Allgire's work, which at the time was being tasked at this particular event in time, double blind, and he got this picture here of Joe Rogan interviewing Trump. And in there, what was interesting was the UFOs coming up. It's one of the first topics here. And so Trump did speak with Rogan yesterday, or the Friday, actually, when it was recorded, about Area 51 and some UFOs. We're going to get into that in a moment. But the reason I bring this up was because for all intents and purposes, in that data set, it was attached to basically the beginning of a new world, what Clif High called a sci-fi world, that this was a very, very important temporal marker bringing us into this new way of living, or this new formation of reality here for us humans on the planet. Let me get your thoughts on that first, Biggs. Where are we on that timeline to getting into sci-fi world? What did you make of this Trump-Rogan interview, first of all, just generally speaking? Did he hit the mark? Did we wake up a lot of normies with that? Did it somehow have enough in there to suggest that we're moving into a brand new world, that we've cracked the egg, so to speak? What was your first thoughts on this interview, Biggs?
I don't know if it, being in this space for a very long time, we knew everything that was said. People who don't know what they're talking about the UFOs, about Elon and all that, might have opened their eyes. But for the people who've been in this for a long time, we've seen it all before. I mean, I've got night vision goggles. I can go see aliens anytime I want. And most people, I think from all the polls that have been taken, most people do believe there is life outside of intelligent life outside of the planet. It would be harder to find intelligent life inside the planet these days than outside. But I've been studying this stuff forever, and we'll get into a little of it later when we talk about the Grand Canyon. But I mean, there's things that he was saying that a lot of the normies will be going, "Oh, he's crazy. He's talking about aliens," and he didn't really answer the question other than saying, "Well, here's what I've talked to these guys, and that they've seen it." Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter what Trump says. They're going to say, "Oh, he's crazy because he said this," even though 98% of the time he's right.
Yeah.
They're tapping my phones, and then the Democrats say we should kick him out of the office because he's crazy, and then we find out they were tapping his phone, stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, I enjoyed the interview. It was, Trump's interviews lately have been very, he's perfected it now. He's got it down, and it's not real controversial. People love to pound on him, but when you get pounded on so much, you build up a resilience, and he's got the answers for everything now. So yeah, I think it was a good interview. It was great. I don't think it was earth shattering, other than it marked a point in the middle of the melee that's about to start, that we could go back in 6 months and say, oh, it really kind of started when Trump started talking to Joe Rogan. They were talking about UFOs and all the bigger thing to me was when he pulled out the Oprah Winfrey and the View people saying, oh, we love Trump, we want him to be president. And then 2 seconds later, they're like, we hate Trump, he should die. So yeah, very interesting.
I think for the normies, that was probably a big point also. You just brought up the 39 days to melee, folks. If you don't know what Bix is alluding to, we're going to get into it a little bit later on here into the show, but you want to perhaps watch this video from Clif High on his Substack. It was entitled, indeed, 39 days to melee. Now, going back to the interview, I thought this was interesting. I was watching live, and this person commented, imagine telling someone 15 years ago that the host of Fear Factor and the host of The Apprentice talking to each other on a podcast would be the most important political event in 2024. And I was like, well, actually, somebody did tell us that in 2009. It was, of course, a Clif High. And I said, welcome to the Woo. This is important here in our ability, Penny, to perceive time and to understand how universe is talking to us all the time. And it appears that this particular temporal marker, as Clif High calls it, is an indication of that we are contributing and that we are very much a part of what is being transformed in front of our very eyes right now. And this is why he believes this is a very important temporal marker as well. Can you speak to that, Penny, your thoughts, generally speaking, on the interview itself, but also why perhaps temporally speaking, it matters more than perhaps ever before, our ability to forecast these events, but to understand that we are not in this linear time loop, but that we are participating in the development of our own evolution here in a way that perhaps we hadn't seen or understood before today. Penny.
I think a couple things I would say. The first, my impression when I listened to the interview was that this was a turning point. Hands down, normie or, alternative, conservative or liberal, didn't matter. The turning point was the way in which we would interact with our leadership. And this was a way of interacting that was very personal. It was very real. It was down to earth. I love the part where they were talking about fighting. I remember thinking to myself, now, if that was 2 girls, we'd be talking about something else, maybe recipes, maybe babies, maybe hair. But here's 2 guys talking about mixed martial arts and UFC, whatever that stands for, and really enjoying the conversation. And then like, oh, wait, we're supposed to be having an interview here for political reasons. So they go back to the political thing. I mean, it was a perfect example of the kind of level of engagement that we are not going to be willing to be satisfied with sound bites anymore. We're not going to be willing to listen to he said this, and it's like 6 people away from the he said. We want to hear it from the horse's mouth. And so that was a big turning point as far as I was concerned. The fact that it was not controlled by the mainstream media, I thought was absolutely fabulous. And I think I looked earlier today to see how many people had looked at that interview. As of yesterday, it was 28 million on YouTube. And I thought, oh my God, okay. So, the whole thing is, I think we're entering into, and I really, you guys might have to tell me, what exactly does sci-fi world mean? I hear that term. I think Cliffy is the one who came up with it, but I really don't know what that means, or is there a definition?
Well, I can proffer one. I think I understand it. But if Cliff is still in the chat, we'll let him write down the answer, and I'll try to pick it up and bring it up here on the live stream. Right. I agree with you with respect to this interview. What it did, and it's more well, that was just on YouTube in terms of the view count, but also on Twitter and all the other platforms.
Right. I
being
didn't even look at
repeated.
those.
So, exactly. So we're looking at astronomical numbers, but people who maybe saw Trump for the first time had to consolidate what they've been told in the last week, because this last week we had this huge blitzscreen of over 5,000 stories on mainstream media telling us that Trump, of course, was the Hitler incarnated, and that he wanted to use the military against the Americans. And as far as this was being promulgated by mainstream news, the interview kind of does the opposite. He doesn't come across as a Hitler, not even close. But that's my opinion. But if you also want to have a very specific technical opinion about temperament, about personal makeup, Mr. Peterson here did a really good analysis. He just posted that earlier today. It's on the screen now. Is Trump dangerous? A psychological analysis. And there he goes through what he calls the X team. He looks at Elon Musk, Vivek. He looks at the rest of the team, and the VPs were there. So I thought that was very interesting. And so people watching this now have to consolidate what they saw, what they heard on Joe Rogan versus what they're being told on mainstream news. And I think you're right. We're never going to want to go back to the 1 minute sound bites or these political debates where all the answers are structured to 1 minute, and that's like you don't have any context or anything. So I thought that was pivotal in that point. I think people are going to demand more now that we can get and sit down and listen to president speak and answer questions for 3 hours. That's absolutely unseen before. So I think you're right. We're not going to go back after that. People are going to want and demand this type of in-depth analysis of the people who say they're working for us or who are asking for our vote. So I think that was very interesting. Now, in the interview itself, there's maybe 3 or 4 items I'd like to share with the audience here tonight and go with you guys a little bit more into detail with. First one was Trump's announcement. He kind of alluded to this, maybe it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago at this Bronx barbershop meeting, when somebody asked him about, hey, the American dream is getting really, really hard right now because we're being taxed at every level. We're taxed on what we make, we're taxed on what we spend, and everything in between, basically, until we're dead. And the American dream is kind of dead. So I'm paraphrasing here one of the questions from the barbershop guests there, or clients. And Trump says, yeah, there's a way. He said that 2 times. Yes, there's a way. And he went on to explain how in the era of tariffs, the United States was so rich that they had to employ committees on how to help them spend all of this money. So that was kind of like the trial balloon, if you wish. And then he went on and he repeated this now on a much bigger venue with Joe Rogan. And that's where I want to start tonight. And maybe if I can ask you, Bix, on this too. Like, do you think this is where we're going? We're going to get into many aspects here of the economy, but is it possible? Is there a way to go there? And how does that tie in perhaps with the road to Ruta, if anything, going back to no income tax and more of a tariff kind of organizational process for the United States to bring in some income? Is that even possible at this point? What do you think he's up to?
Well, yes, no. I'd say, when you look at the history of income tax, we didn't have income tax before 1913. When they brought the Fed in, they brought a 1% income tax in, and people were like, it's only 1%. What's to worry about it? And then at like mid 40s, it was if you had a high enough income, it was 90%. Now it's around 40% in the United States, and it's insane because they take this money and they spend it on crap. We're giving our income. We're giving a portion of our income that we work hard for to the Ukraine, and they launder it through FTX back into the Democratic Party. Where in the Constitution does it say that's legal? And this whole concept of income tax that, we have to have an income tax to run the government. The government is beyond overbloated. They waste money. They steal money. And it's from the highest echelons of the government, they steal most of the money. So, yeah, I do think we're going to have a collapse of the monetary system. I do think that that globalization will end for a while, meaning we're not going to trade with people. No one's going to want to trade with us. As the unbacked fiat system unwinds, this is in the Road to Ruta documents that came out of the Fed. Countries will stop trading with each other and work on rebuilding what they have. And I think it's the best thing for the United States. Of course, it's going to be very difficult for everybody. I mean, globalization has been with us since probably the 50s or so on a larger scale. But what it is now is basically we gave all our jobs away. We need to look at ourselves and say, okay, what can we make? What can we produce for the people within our country? I mean, if people are looking for jobs, there's going to be plenty of jobs when the electronic monetary system implodes, because there'll be no transportation of goods. And Clif has said that back to the Wi-Fi or the sci-fi world. I think some of the key things that will help us a lot, AI will help us a lot in that new world, because there will be a different kind of understanding on how people work and who they work for and why they work. But also there will be new forms of energy. We will be transporting each other in different ways. We've had 0-point energies. We've had all kinds of ways to produce electricity that have been kind of shuttled away, hidden away. I have invented pulling hydrogen out of water, and that guy dies. That's a water engine you could have made. All this stuff, magnetic engines. There's been literally dozens and dozens of better ways to create power and electricity, but it's such an integral part of our financial system. I mean, you think of oil and gas and cars and airplanes and all that stuff. I think as we move forward, all those barriers will be broken down, and we will no longer be shielded from those types of forms of energy that we can create. Free energy would free us up for so much stuff. Just think of how much money you spend on your power and your car and your transportation and all that stuff. If we had free energy, oh my God, the whole world would open up to most of humanity, and those people at the top would be no need for them, especially if it's free energy on like an individual basis. For example, you have a little box outside your house that powers your house. And we've had this technology, I think, close to 100 years, and it's not allowed to get out there. So I think that will be part of that. I forgot what question I was answering.
Is that the sci-fi world? Is that sci-fi?
World,
different energy and different transportation and different money? Is that the sci-fi?
Well, the money thing, yeah. I think the money thing is huge. I wouldn't say a different money. I think we're going back to an old money.
I'd like to add to that.
Silver is money.
I'd like to add to that the innovation boom. I think Clif was suggesting earlier in these data sets was that sci-fi world would mark, in a way, the death of the dollar, but the death of the dollar would mark the death of the secrecy around this new technology, the technology being let out, and then people working on that, and then getting this huge innovation boom. With that, there was also the ET component, but for sure, the 0-point energy, and perhaps even learning from other space beings and putting all that into the mix for humanity moving forward. So rebuilding a completely new society from the ground up, to where the old dollar system kind of crumbles on itself. All those institutions crumble also by necessity, and then suddenly we're building the new. So that's kind of how I understand a sci-fi world, and we're just on the verge apparently of that. And this temporal marker of the Joe Rogan interview apparently is going to be reviewed as kind of a line of the sand, as society moving in that direction, right? So I want to bring that back in for you here, Penny, because in this interview, Donald Trump talks about Area 51 and UFOs, and he's asked if there's life outside, and he says, well, why wouldn't there be? He doesn't actually say yes. At the beginning, when Rogan asks him, he says, do they tell you a lot about that? He says, oh, yeah, a lot. But then he doesn't really get into what he's being told, apart from these two Air Force men who saw some weird craft flying in weird maneuvers. But that's interesting, because in that particular clip also, he talked about one of his relatives, John Trump.
John Trump.
Right? And the fact that this guy perhaps had some Tesla technology when Tesla died. A lot of his information went to this Office of Alien Property, and apparently John Trump was called to analyze this data. So he made a reference to that, and I think that was a clue to Trump saying, hey, we're moving into sci-fi world here. We're going to use a lot of this technology to kind of create this make America great situation again. Speak to that a little bit, Penny, to see the the connection between John Trump and what Trump is now saying about UFOs and ETs, and perhaps this innovation boom that would make America great again. How do you see that picture developing? And the fact also that he's the guy that put a Space Force on the books, presumably to bring a lot of the technology that's already been out there that we've bought and paid for maybe 60, 70 years ago, now back into the books and for the betterment of society. Let's speak about that and how that can transform us into that sci-fi world. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's when Tesla died, John Trump got his papers, and he got some of them. I don't know that he got all of them, but it was clear that he talked with Donald, his nephew, in some depth. When in the interview, Trump says, "My uncle told me that in the future you would be able to put this atomic bomb in a suitcase and go in and blow up a city." And at the time, that was just unheard of. It wasn't realistic. That would be like the old ENIAC machines that we started with as computers. You'd have one in your house, or you'd wear it on your wrist. No, that people would not be able to get their mind around that, because the ENIAC machine was the size of 2 rooms. You weren't going to put it on your wrist. So that kind of conversation was clear. It was clear that it went on. When he said we're going to have clean energy, immediately the flash that I had was, he knows this. We're not talking about solar or wind. I mean, that's just the most inefficient kind of energy you can get, and it's not reliable. But when you have access to technology from elsewhere, the first thing that I noticed, I'll speak for myself, I guess, is that they have a knowledge of how to manage, how to utilize frequencies, and not just single frequencies, but how to program frequencies to interact in such a way that energy doesn't do any harm. And so if you, for instance, if you start with nuclear and you stop with nuclear, you're screwed, because you have all these nuclear rods that have to be handled and put somewhere. And you end up with scenarios like we have in Tennessee along the Nolichucky River, where the silt is buried a truck that had 250 canisters of live radioactive material in those cans, and cadaver dogs and people are dying and getting sick. So, that's the kind of problem you get when you say, woohoo, we've got something, we're going to use it for weaponry. It's like, oh, brother, okay. But if you go further to look at and research further, and you get beyond just the nuclear, whether you're talking fission or fusion, doesn't matter. You learn how to manipulate frequencies such that when you have these rods, you treat them with these frequencies, and it changes the characteristics. It changes the nature of those rods. They're no longer poisonous. They no longer are lethal. And I think that when Trump said that comment about we're going to have clean energy, and then they went on to talk about nuclear and how good it was, I thought, he knows. He knows that nuclear waste material, not only can it be regenerated, but it can be made absolutely harmless. We haven't done the research. We haven't done the work, or if we have, we haven't allowed it to come out. And so that's really one of the things that struck me big time in terms of the like their whole conversation, that and the tariff. I mean, it was clear that Trump thinks much deeper. He's not about money. He's about how smart are you? He must have said that umpteen times in that interview. They're really stupid versus, wow, he's really smart, or she's really smart, or whatever. And so the whole thing was at a whole different level as far as I was concerned.
Well, thank you for that. And in terms of the windmill not being efficient, he got into the whales dying on the beach, and of course the mainstream media the next day, oh no, that's not true, and like, oh my god, look at all the videos and all the scientists coming out like, we're killing all the whales. Of course he was right. He's not saying this out of thin air, of course. Oh my god.
And when you see a flock of birds hit those windmills, those flocks are huge.
Mhm.
Birds go flying in every direction. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, that can't be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And you
So,
know, he did talk about the whales, but there's many
yes.
more conversations to be had about how it's negatively affecting humans also. This extra low frequency in the
Yeah.
areas where these windmills are, and people are developing different types of cancers and activating different types of diseases in their body. There's a lot of
Right.
evidence to support that is not the way also.
Yeah.
Let me just bring this up. Cliff, I did respond to the answer earlier, and actually, you and I were on the same track, but it's after this. We were more into details. He's going at the highest level here. He's saying sci-fi world is where the veils are removed,
Okay.
where you can discover reality directly instead of being fed manure by the
Yeah.
controllers. So in that very way, yes, the Joe Rogan interview is the beginning of sci-fi world. We're hearing from the president for 3 hours, uncut, unedited, which is
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal. You know, a couple of months ago, somebody here in Canada, Dr. Peterson, did the same thing with Premier Danielle Smith. And at that time, the CBC here was telling us that she was crazy. She's a right wing. She's wading in the waters of extremism, and she's flirting with the anti-vax, like all these weird sound bites. And then he sat down with her for 2 hours, and I was like, oh my God, this woman's brilliant. Like, she's totally not what she's being portrayed by the mainstream news. But this is, to your point earlier, Penny, we're moving into a world where we're not going to accept these sound bites anymore. We're going to want to hear it from the horse's mouth, and we're going to see more of this stuff. There might be here too. I want you to address the veil thing very quickly also.
Okay.
This removal of the veil, to some extent, it's the mind programming, the MK Ultra.
Right.
If you guys go watch one of his videos, he talked about how from perhaps the 50s or 60s, all up until just a couple of weeks ago, when Clinton admitted that they had lost control, that they needed more censorship, we were in the MK Ultra part of this contention. And now we're moving into the kinetic, and eventually here, perhaps in November or December, into the ET stuff, right? So speak to that mind control right now, how it's lifting. Why is that veil lifting? Is it because they've overplayed their hand and people kind of see the game now? Or is it also because of these new energies from space? Or is it because of some other ETs also leveling the playing field with other technologies here that might be changing the game, so to speak? What's your gut feeling on that? How's the
It's
veil
a
being removed?
combination. Any one of those factors is powerful all by themselves. But when you have all of them converging, oh my gosh, the mainstream media, that has been from, to use Cliffy's term, that's been a huge veil, because they feed people illusions. The veil, from my point of view, is an illusion. It's a false belief, and it's something that it colors and taints everything you see, and so you don't see what is. And if you're going to have an awakened consciousness, you're going to have to see what is, and you're going to have to deal with that. So, that's just a small definition. But when you have energies from space or energies from Naughty Boy, what somebody just yelled at me for using the term naughty boys. He said, no, they're predators. Use the right term. And I was like, oh, okay. But when you have bad people that are using frequencies on us, when everything that we've constructed, from cars to windmills to window glass to electrical systems, they're all they don't nurture the life force. They interfere. We are electrical beings. We're electromagnetic plasma beings. And when you have all these weird, frequencies going on, we live in a frequency soup, you end up with all kinds of disruption in everything from mitochondria to meiosis to the way organs are supposed to act and interact, to proteins and the way they're shaped. All of that is dependent on frequency, and it has to be the right frequency. So yeah, there's no way we could not be having some kind of major shift in consciousness right now because of all those factors. And when you've been betrayed, a lot of people got the shot and got hurt. Or somebody in their family is watching the person who got the shot struggle. That is a wake-up call that people don't forgive very easily. So
Absolutely. And speaking of all the disruptions to our energy field, to the mind programming, to everything else, the food we eat, the air we breathe, it's important more than ever now to have our bodies into fighting shape. And this is why a lot of people are saying still, Penny, you look so young and you look like a tough fighter there in the ring. I really appreciate that. Guys, if you're looking at perhaps removing some of these detractors from your own health, please consider maybe having a better night's sleep. You can try Clif High's Pure Sleep here. You can find that at beyondmystic.net/shop. That'll help you have a better sleep, but of course, and also with the human growth hormone in there, rebuild your body on a daily basis. So very important sleep here in these crazy times. And if you want to remove also oxidative stress from your body, please do consider trying the C60 Purple Power. You'll find that link also here on beyondmystic.net. A little bit later into the show, guys, we're going to be giving away a beautiful candle here. This is the Ascension Organites Ace of Cups candle we're giving here tonight. This is a new concoction, new fragrances that Janine and Carla from Ascension Organites have been working on here for the last couple of months. We're going to be giving one of those away tonight, as well as this beautiful Liam pyramid here, an Organite pyramid. So pay attention to all the keywords and the dates and the names here, and perhaps you'll be the lucky winner here tonight. One of the things I want to switch gears to, guys, is the election. Now, if we are to enter sci-fi world and remove this veil to where, okay, we can understand our own reality without the bullshit, I'm assuming a big part of that has to be a reconciliation of sorts or an education of sorts as to the last election. What the fuck happened in 2020, right? And Trump didn't mention this during the interview with Joe Rogan. And he said something very critical there. He said paper ballots had watermarked. And so that brought back some of the information that we were getting after the last election. And it was funny because Joe asked him, he said, well, are you going to bring this out if you win? And he kind of went there and then he kind of didn't go there, right? So it's kind of like he almost did it, then he didn't. Because a lot of people have been asking, oh, if Trump gets back into power, he's going to persecute all these people. He's going to be revengeful and all this stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, well, it's not revenge if it's justice. I've said this many times on my show that in order for this country to heal and also see reality for what it was, we also need to know if, in fact, we were duped and if this election was stolen in 2020. And we have to have judges have the balls to actually listen to the information. The mainstream news has been telling us year over year now that Trump keeps losing in court on this very topic. And what Trump said here also, and he's repeated this a couple of times here during this campaign, he says, well, no, actually, I haven't lost it. No judge have decided to listen to the case. They didn't give me standing yet. I'm the presidential candidate. How can I not have standing? So I think there, too, in terms of lifting the veil and people seeing the reality, on one hand, we see Trump with 100,000 people at his rallies, and we see Kamala with 500 or 5,000 people at her rallies. Clearly, the reality is forming behind us, but we need to understand really what happened in the last election and where we're going moving forward. And perhaps this idea of this new technology of voting on the blockchain also that could solve this. Maybe we can get into that in a later show. But Bix, what did you make of that comment that he brought up there with the watermark, suggesting that maybe indeed we do have all the proof of the stolen election and we just need somebody to hear it for the first time here? And do we get to that here? Is that the road to healing the country before we can build and get into the sci-fi world? Bix?
Well, I remember in 2016, it was August, that the U.S. Postal Service got a patent for blockchain voting. And I was like, oh, this is going to solve all the problems for, it'll be implemented in 2016. We'll have a fair election. And it wasn't implemented. And then we get to 2020. I'm like, oh, this will obviously be implemented. I read this whole thing. It's very technical. And I thought, oh, for sure it'll be implemented. It wasn't implemented. I'm like, okay, so, it all depends on which side thinks they can rig better as to who's going to rig the election, which is, normally it's the same side rigging both sides. But, it is I don't think that Trump gave up power in 2020. I think this whole 4 years has been a sham for the sheeple out there to watch, because there's so many things that happened that shouldn't have happened in the beginning. For example, Trump or Biden swearing in 5 minutes before noon. No, it has to be after the 12, and all these things. They were just piling up. And the gun salute and all this stuff was basically showing me Trump's still in charge, or the military is in charge, or somebody's still in charge, because it's not Biden.
And you know what? I have to back you up. Trump is actually saying that now. And just in the last couple of weeks, he did this interview with Glenn Beck where he said that the country is being ruled by a committee right now. And if you look at continuity of government, that's exactly what would be happening right now if, in fact, we were in a COG event. And he also said, in going back to this barbershop thing in the Bronx there a couple of weeks ago, he said, you know, I was president for 4 years and then another 4 years, kind of weird, sort of. Right? He's kind of suggesting that he's still somehow in power. So he might still be playing that role of CIC, but clearly, and he keeps repeating it, oh, Joe Biden's not doing anything. He's sleeping all day long. Like, don't,
but we don't want him though. I mean, we don't want Trump to say, yeah, I was in power for the last 4 years. Then he can't have another 4 years.
That's right.
Well, again, though, hold on. He did say in another video, and I'm trying to find the clip. I played it last week with Joe, where he said, you know, the last 4 years were important in order for people to realize how bad it is and how bad it could get, so that now when I come back and fix it, you guys will let me fix it and understand why we're fixing it, suggesting that this was a big movie and it's orchestrated somehow.
So I have a problem with that because I've been hearing it for 20 years now. It's always been, it's just so people can see it. Well, the reality is we're just rigging the market so people can understand that it was rigged. But the reality is you get a new batch of people in and that fake reality turns into the real reality. It's kind of like kicking the can with the Federal Reserve note. They've been saying that they're going to end the Federal Reserve note since 1913, since when it began. But as it grows bigger and bigger and people become more and more attached, and the meaning of destroying the Federal Reserve note affects everybody on the planet now. This is the first time in history that we've ever had a global unbacked fiat monetary system that's going to fail. I mean, there's been failed currencies in Weimar and Zimbabwe and stuff like that, but there's never been a global worldwide fiat unbacked currency, and then there's never been one that failed. The ramifications of this are so big, that's why they keep kicking the can. We'll take care of it later. We're working on it. We'll take care of it later. Nobody, Catherine Austin Fitts says it very well. Nobody's ready to press that red button. If you could press that red button and end all the bad things that happen, you would be like a fish out of water. We have been babied. We live in a nanny state our whole life. And when that ends abruptly with a fiat money collapse, we won't know how to survive. Most people won't be able to even feed themselves. So at some point, you got to stop kicking the can. At some point, you got to stop pretending you're teaching other people and take responsibility and end it right now. Stop trying to teach us a lesson.
You're starting to sound like Carrie Cassidy there, buddy. Hold on. Don't be so angry.
That's kind of cruel.
No, but I'm with you on that too. And I think most of the audience agree. Like, we're long in the tooth with all this stuff. Specifically, the people who are awake are like, how much more of this can we take? And how much of this education do we need until we actually fix the problems? And I think the only thing I could say to that is we don't know what we don't know. And seeing as we're not commanding this war effort, if the goal is still, and I believe it is, to get through to the other side with the least amount of human losses, then perhaps these delays still make sense. As frustrating as they are, Bix, perhaps that's the answer. But I don't know. But I do share that same frustration with you. Let me ask you, Penny, on this idea of the ballots, again, being watermarked, and whether or not we need to bring this to a resolve either way here before we move forward into sci-fi world. What was your last look-see on this? Did you look at this? Do we eventually get there? Do we get there through the Brunson case? Do we get there to eventually just hear Trump out and his evidence where judges suddenly are going to give him a standing? Like, or is this kind of null and void at this point? We just need to pack up and move forward once we have this election. What do you think is going to happen?
What I've seen, and I've only seen this once or twice, and this was like back in the beginning of summer, the whole election question of how should we vote? Is it by paper? Is it by computer? Is it by, mail-in ballot, or what? Do we all stand up and say aye, or what? That is going to change. Something big time happens after the election is over. It's a little bit late, but it's like people have hit the wall in terms of what they're willing to accept. And there's it isn't just the election, it's the electoral college. A whole bunch of things come under big debate, huge debate. And that is what leads to some of the breaking away of some parts of the country. They're not doing it that way, and these guys aren't having it this way. And so, they come apart. But there's heavy, hot and heavy, I'm going to say entrenched ideas about how it should be. And it's different in different areas of the country. When Trump said in the interview that we used to have paper ballots, and by 9 o'clock, everybody knew, 9 p.m. on the night of voting, everybody knew who was president. Now we have computers, and they say, well, we should have an answer within 2 weeks. And I just laughed out loud at that. It was like, oh my God. What are we doing that we have these supposedly smart, capable computers that can't figure out something that humans could figure out by 9 p.m. and still get home to go to bed on time? So I think we're up to, at this point, a change in elections, how we elect things, a change in the electoral college, or who aspires to that, a change in criteria for who can run. And those look like age and health kinds of criteria. Changes in the rules. Everybody liked the Constitution, but not everybody interpreted the Constitution in the same way. And so it looked like that was a breaking point. We're going to interpret it this way. And if you like that, you go live there. If you don't like it, you go live somewhere else. So big changes in terms of how we sort out the governance thing, and a big restoration of rights and an addition of rights, a whole bunch of rights to the people, which I thought were, I was like, I wonder what those are. I'm not sure what they are, but yeah, that's coming. And that's the big dilemma, big dialogue, the big argument over the next couple of years. It looks like there's fighting in a few places because of that. But we eventually settle that, and life is very, very different after this year. There's a big dip in how, after the election is over, if Trump wins and if he makes it to inauguration, and I'm not sure that he will, or that his, what do you call it, his clones, his duplicates, somebody might get in trouble there and get taken out. But if he makes it, then one of the things I saw in the look-see was that the issue was if the clone or the lookalike gets taken out, and then Trump steps in and says, well, that was just my proxy, that wasn't really me. That upsets a lot of people. It's like, you bugger, you were trying to fool us by pretending that was you. And they don't understand that there's a necessity for safety.
Well, generally speaking, the white hats in general have that same issue. If they have been playing this role for quite some time, running all of these people as puppets, they are also now guilty of kind of misleading the population. And at some point, they have to atone for that or account for that. And we have to understand it and understand the reason why, and then decide whether or not we want to move forward or forgive them. I don't know, but that's part of that healing process. Guys, before we go too far, somebody just said, hey, JC, you're still on YouTube. I'm like, oh, shit. We got pretty deep. Guys, come and join us on the Rumble link. The link is in the live chat now. I'm just going to cut off the YouTube feed. There's still some more deeper conversations to be had here tonight. I want to make sure we're all safe and sound here. So please come and join us on the Rumble or on the Twitter feed there as well. Here's the link one more time in the live chat if you're on the YouTube side of things. There you go. We'll see you in just a moment. Let me just remove